Truly sensible capitalism can only work if it is truly ethical, quality-oriented, and sustainable. Sustainable capitalism is social democracy. Without truly sensible capitalism, there is no freedom, liberty, nor justice. By all means, rock the boat. Just don't sink it. Those who do not have the wisdom to tolerate the freedom of others are neither wise nor free. Actually, most people fail because other people fail to help them succeed. Do not be impatient. Watch this rant video all the way. It starts out a bit weak, but it gets better and better. You'll see. Okay, so somebody watched my video, the previous one to this one, and asked me what my theory was about these hackers who were under the control of different interest groups. Well, first of all, let me make something very clear. I'm a philosopher. I have a vast imagination. I'm also a writer. I write science fiction. I produce fictional works. So I have a vast imagination, and I have the ability to imagine how things probably are based on the best possible knowledge that's out there. I'm not a hacker. I don't know how to hack into anything. I don't approve of hacking in general. I think hacking is very dangerous. And I think that some hackers might be ethical, but I think the majority of hackers will abuse that power. I also think that our personal private details should not be accessible via the internet, on computer data banks, whatever. That information should be on paper, and there should be all kinds of safeguards to ensure that our information is kept confidential and privy only to the eyes of those particular people in government or elsewhere whom we are supposed to be able to trust. That's another issue as to whom we trust. So my theory on this is that there are several types of hackers. There are those hackers who have political agendas, and they manage to maintain their independence, and in my opinion they create more difficulty for the world than making things easier, because they have all kinds of idealistic attitudes. So there's that type of hacker, the independent hacker. Now, I'm not saying that all hackers who are independent are like that. Probably there are a few who really do have a good understanding of ethics. The assumption that somebody who's good at hacking must be super intelligent and very wise is wrong. Hacking does require some intelligence, but it requires a certain type of intelligence, a limited intelligence, and it certainly doesn't necessarily require a lot of wisdom. Of course, to be an independent hacker for a long time, I would assume that to be an independent hacker for a long time, you'd have to have some wisdom in order to avoid getting in trouble. There are hackers that work for interest groups, and this is my imagination. I don't have proof of this, and I don't want to have proof of this. So I don't have proof of this, but this is just from my imagination. There are these hackers who are caught hacking by whatever, government agencies or private interest groups who make it seem like they're actually the government. Who knows? People with lots of money can do lots of things, right? And these hackers are caught, and then they're offered a deal. Either they serve the interest groups, or, whatever. You can imagine whatever. So they serve, and they get benefits, but they're watched by other hackers who are also under threat. And who knows? Who knows if some of the hackers manage to create their own power base. But the point I'm trying to make is that these hackers that serve these interest groups have a tremendous technology at their disposal. This is incredible data banks, internet. They can do so much damage. They can harm people's medical records. They can alter information. So I have no doubt that that exists. I also have no doubt that certain governments and certain private entities fight other governments and entities and their hackers. So there's this war going on between the hackers of these people against the hackers of those people. And then more than that. You know, it's like, who knows, maybe there's about it. In terms of the major wars between hackers, cyber wars if you want to call them, there's probably at least a dozen big ones going on right now. You can imagine the hackers who are working for one big country versus another big country, and then another big country, and so forth. So 3-4 big countries, hackers fighting each other. And their purpose is to undermine the other big country's interest, or to, in some way, benefit their big country's interest, or their big company's interests. So it could be a mega corporation's hackers versus another mega corporation's hackers, or it could be a mega corporation's hackers versus government hackers. I mean, you get the picture. Hackers all over the place. And that's my theory. I don't have proof. I don't want proof. And saying this, of course, is, quite thought-provoking. But I think we do need to think about this, because this could easily lead to the end of human civilization. You see, my forte, what I studied the most, aside from hard sciences, I studied ethics. I studied ethics in my own way. I'm self-educated. I read Spinoza's The Ethics. I've read various books on ethics. I've done my own research on ethics and come to my own conclusions too. I have some very well thought ideas on how to have ethical government, how to have ethical private sector, how to have ethical public sector. So ethics is important to me. And of course, you have, organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and others, Media Watch, etc. And they're trying to supposedly ensure that there's ethics in those areas of society, in those areas of the world that deal with the media and electronic information. So, the thing is, without ethics, we're doomed. And we need to find a way to severe the ability of hackers to cause serious damage. And it seems hopeless, because for that you would need a major international agreement, and you would need major international cooperation. Otherwise, it's not gonna work, right? And the trouble with all of this is that, unlike physical paper records, unlike buildings that exist and places that exist with people in it, hacking is, for the most part, is invisible. It takes place over the internet, via cyberspace, through computer systems. And very few people are involved compared to the people that those people impact. Now, how we are ever going to get an international agreement on separating information from computer systems so that personal details are not easily identifiable with actual individuals. There's a way of providing data storage that can be done in a way so that nobody knows who that information pertains to except specific authorized persons, and they only know that by a code number, which they then have a paper record, and they have to go to the paper record to know who that information pertains to. Let's say in the health services sector, if you were a patient in an ethical world, your information would be amongst a lot of other information of a lot of other people, right? But nobody would know it's yours except for that code number, which has to be then checked each time via a paper link. And no way that on the electronic version is there any evidence of who that information concerns, who it is about. That would be that can be done, and that would ensure some degree of confidentiality, privacy, security that would benefit everybody. The same goes for other major ways in which our details are kept. So, the argument that, well, that just defeats the purpose, and we go back to a lot of paperwork, and the whole purpose of the electronic data transfer, retrieval, storage, computers, cyberspace, internet, was to facilitate these transactions, make them faster, and not have to rely on paper, and therefore reduce the amount of paper. But the price we're paying in terms of our security internationally and individually is way too high. We just got to change the whole thing. Take background security check companies. Suppose X person can't get a decent job after many, many tries, in spite of the fact that they are actually qualified. And they don't know why. And then suddenly somebody who's a hacker contacts them and says, listen, I can tell you why you're not getting a decent job. It's because there was this background check company and they decided to write a bad report on you based on innuendo, based on hearsay, whatever, false information. So X person cannot get a job because she or he somebody has put information about them that is false. I know this is happening. I know this very well. And this is dangerous. That's why background security check firms need to be regulated by the public. And they need to be totally controlled by the public. And that's something that these companies are not willing to do. And how do you prove that you have a false report on you that's preventing you from getting a decent job? You can't. Because in order to get that evidence, you have to violate certain laws that protect these companies. That's the catch-22. So there's a lot of areas, a lot of different aspects to modern technology and ethics, and especially in terms of cyber technology and computers. There's just so much ethics issues here involved. And unless we handle this, unless we change this, we're doomed. Because I'll tell you what can happen, or what is happening right now. This ability of credit rating agencies to destroy entire economies or harm them, severely harm them, can be based upon altered data. Even those agencies' experts may be unaware of the fact that they are getting false information, because their eyes and ears are not necessarily direct contact with the governments, with the institutions that they are rating, with the companies that they're rating. So I'm not trying to say that that's exactly what's going on in terms of all the agencies that do credit ratings, but it probably is quite a few. And I would bet that that is part of what's going on. Well, this is bad enough. This can lead to disaster, and looks like it is heading in that way. So the credit rating agencies are blind, and they're dependent on technology that's dangerous. And think about it. With the power of hackers to serve big, powerful, rich entities, there's so much damage that can be done to the world. And it can lead to conflicts that get out of hand, and disruptions in the economy. On our U.S. currency, it says, "In God we trust." You can substitute God for "in each other we trust," because, if you think about it, even in the Jewish tradition, we think of God as the combined entity of all entities, the great super entity that we're all part of. And if you think about it, "in God we trust" sort of means in each other we trust. And without trust, that money becomes vulnerable to becoming worthless or almost worthless. So trust is the main factor. And with this modern technology, with hackers and how they can manipulate data and information that can affect the lives of billions of people, everybody. We just have a very vulnerable world. We got to address this because this can lead to disaster, and it is already heading in that way. So I am absolutely convinced that the massive competition around the world between major, powerful, rich entities and governments, major governments, these wars that we don't see on a daily basis going on in cyberspace over the internet are doing tremendous damage to trust around the world, and it's devaluing the value of our economies. It's threatening the standard of our living. It's destroying our ability to trust one another, and the ultimate currency of a society is trust. If you cannot trust your government, if you cannot trust the authorities, if you cannot trust the police, if you cannot trust agencies that are meant to protect you from dangerous people, then that's really bad. We should be able to trust those people. I know from my own personal knowledge that there are decent people who work for various federal agencies of the United States. I know this. But not all of them, now I'm not saying I know of the ones that are not decent, but I'm certain that not all of them are nice people. Because occasionally one or two of them get caught, right? And you can just imagine, use your creative imagination and figure it out yourself. Infiltration of major companies by other companies, infiltration of governments. It happens all the time. So we, the people, the public, are expected to trust our governments and our companies, our private corporations, and we can't. We know that private companies, corporations, have produced consumer products that are harmful to our health. We know that for fact. Not just cigarettes, but things like, well, I won't mention what because, they just love to go after anybody who specifies. But there are so many products out there that contain things in them that are not good for our health. And supposedly the purpose of government would be to protect us from those things. But it doesn't always work out that way. In fact, it often doesn't. And also the amounts of things in our foods. Too much sugar, too much salt, you name it. Too much caffeine, etc. So we have a world in which we have a deficit of trust. We have countries, major countries, in which the citizens are having a deficit of trust. And this is endangering all of us. That's what I wanted to say about this. So I think there are these hackers, and either they're rogue hackers or they're working for entities, and many of them, if not all of them, I wouldn't say all of them, sorry, but many of them are probably doing something that is not to the benefit of society, and they may be forced to do it. They may be under the threat of powerful people to do these things. Whoever has the money has the power. Whoever has the information has the power. Whoever has the money has the information. It's kind of like that, The wealthy man has a huge library of books. The poor man does not. Libraries that are open to the public don't necessarily make it easy for people to access the right information. Libraries that are public tend to limit the amount of information that's available because of restrictions on what kind of books that they can give the readers, and so forth. So think about that. Again, I just use my imagination to try to figure out what's going on. All right. Hope to hear your questions.